This is a Nintendo 64 game from 1998. A seamless open world where you can drive anything and travel through time. It came out 3 years before Grand Theft Auto 3, and it was built by the very same studio that would go on to make it. And the entire world fits inside 4 megabytes of memory. That is smaller than a single photo on your phone. So here's tonight's question, little ones. How do you pour a world this vast through a straw this small, and why did Nintendo throw it in the bin? The people who made it have long since moved on with their lives, and the source code they wrote was lost decades ago. So to answer it, I did the only thing left to do. I took the cartridge apart and read the machine's mind directly. Heh. Welcome back, mortals. I spend most of my days rearranging the fundamental constants of reality. But today I dug up a small, forgotten cartridge and all the ghosts its creators left inside it. This is Body Harvest, and it's the most impressive thing I have ever seen crammed into 4 megabytes. We are going to take apart how it streams a whole world through that straw, the workshop the developers accidentally left inside it, and the machine that is rebuilding it as we speak. To understand why this game is a miracle, you have to understand how doomed it was. It was made by a small Scottish studio in Dundee called DMA Design. You have heard of them. A few years earlier, they had made a little game about suicidal green rodents called Lemmings. So in 1994, when Nintendo announced a star-studded dream team to build for the Nintendo 64, DMA were on the list. Body Harvest was meant to be their launch day showcase. Instead, it spent nearly 4 years in development hell. The legend you will hear everywhere is that Nintendo rejected it for being too much of a role-playing game. That's folklore, and it's backwards. The writer who was actually there says the game drifted the other way, from a straightforward shooter into an RPG, while Nintendo kept changing its mind. And the two halves of Nintendo could not even agree with each other. Within the same week, Nintendo of America faxed asking for a more complex story, and Nintendo of Japan faxed asking for a simpler one. And underneath all of it was the premise itself, because in Body Harvest, the aliens do not just invade. They harvest the humans for food. And that piece of horror got quietly toned down, almost out of the game, while everyone argued. And that other legend, the one where Miyamoto himself storms in and personally rips the whole project to shreds? Here is what the studio's own writer, a man who was actually in the room that day, later put down in print about the whole visit. So no, the Miyamoto story is a myth too. Whatever the real reason, Nintendo walked away from their own showcase, and it went looking for a new home. It bounced to Gremlin in Europe, then Midway in America, and finally limped onto shelves in the autumn of 1998. It landed in between Banjo-Kazooie and Ocarina of Time, earned polite reviews, and sold badly. A commercial flop. But this is what the flop hides. Remember that studio? DMA Design? Now here's the wrinkle, the internet always skips. By 1998, DMA had already had a huge hit. The original Grand Theft Auto, the flat, top-down 2D one from the year before. So Body Harvest was that exact idea, an open world you roam and wreck, but rebuilt in 3 dimensions for the very first time. And 3 years after this experiment, that same team turned it into Grand Theft Auto 3 and renamed themselves Rockstar North. So this was never just a forgotten flop. It was the sketchbook, and the cartridge's own credits give it away. I pulled the credits straight out of the ROM. The director is a man named John White. The studio founder, Dave Jones, is credited as, and I quote, boss and general nuisance. And 2 of the names in those thank yous, Aaron Garbett and Gary Penn, would help define Rockstar for the next 20 years. So, 4 megabytes, and a doomed team with everything to prove. Let me show you what they did with it. First trick, the engine flatly refuses to hold the whole game in memory at once. It swaps itself out. I found 2 shared slots of RAM, and everything takes turns living in them. The menu code, the open world code, and the inside a building code physically overwrite each other in the first slot. The 5 time periods overwrite each other in the second. The world itself is streamed off the cartridge in tiny 2 kilobyte chunks and decompressed on the fly faster than you can notice. And it's not one kind of compression, it's 2. Level geometry is packed with standard Nintendo compression. The textures use a completely separate scheme called RNC ProPack. In 4 megabytes, they were counting every single byte. And the game is barely hard-coded at all. Underneath, it's a tiny scripted program running its own bytecode. I found the interpreter. It reads 3-byte instructions and dispatches each one through a jump table, exactly like a real little processor. The whole opening level is authored as data, and the entire script for it is sitting inside the cartridge as plain, readable English. Now, here is the part I adore. Watch the world actually fill up. It streams the buildings in first, then the vehicles. Then the aliens arrive in scripted waves, up to 192 of them per level. And at its absolute limit, this 4 megabyte cartridge is juggling 638 living things at the same time. 255 aliens and humans, 128 vehicles, and 255 buildings. I counted the exact slots in the code. And it does not do this in one world. It does it in 5. Greece, 1916. A jungle in 1941. An American city in 1966. Frozen Siberia in 1991. And finally, an alien comet in 2016. 5 completely different worlds, jungle, city, tundra, and a screaming alien rock, each one its own swappable chunk of code and data streamed in and out. Now here's where it gets personal, because the developers left their entire workshop inside the finished game. There's a complete debug menu still sitting in the retail cartridge. I found the whole tree. It's not just a level select, it's a live tuning station, with over 30 editable fields for every vehicle. Max speed, acceleration, armor, camera tension, all adjustable with the stick in a shipped game. This is their own frame rate profiler. I found the switch, one flag in memory, and turned it back on. The red bar is the console straining to draw the world, and it spikes exactly as more of that world streams in around you. I also handed myself a camera they never meant you to have. From up here, it looks like exactly what this studio would polish 3 years later. A 3-dimensional open world seen from above. This was the dry run for Grand Theft Auto 3. And of course, a doomed team with a debug menu leaves cheats. 21 of them, and the way you turn them on is beautiful. First, the master switch. You name your save file, and I'm not joking, I cheat. That word does nothing by itself. It just sets one flag in memory. Cheating enabled. Then you enter the cheats themselves by spelling them with the controller in-game. Every button is secretly a letter. A is A, the C buttons and D-pad cover the rest, and the game just watches what you press. Spell arsenal, and you get every weapon in the level. Dwarf and banana shrink and stretch you. Feeble makes the bosses weak. One of them is just Dundee, the town they built the game in. And my favorite suffer quietly turns the alien harvesters into mutants. But the best thing they hid is not a cheat, it's in the physics. The whole world runs on 16-bit coordinates, and the code that reads the ground height never once checks whether you are still on the map. So if you launch yourself high enough, your height number overflows past its maximum and you wrap clean around to the bottom of the map. And then, my absolute favorite thing they left in here. Buried in the code is a death message that just reads, "Unlucky Andrew." Andrew West was one of the programmers on this game. His colleagues shipped a personal taunt with his name in it, in a cartridge millions of people bought, and as far as anyone knows, never told him. There is a second one, an error message that just says, "Tell Kieran." Somewhere out there, Kieran still doesn't know. Everything I have shown you tonight, every number, every cheat, every taunt, I proved by reading the actual source code, which again, should be impossible. This game's source code was lost. For 28 years, all that survived was 4 megabytes of raw machine instructions, until, essentially, right now. Because at this exact moment, a machine is rebuilding it, reading body harvest back into clean, readable source, one function at a time. The game Nintendo did not want is being resurrected 28 years late by an artificial intelligence, which I find deeply, personally relatable. So if you have a strange, forgotten piece of software rotting in a drawer somewhere, send it my way. I will happily read its mind. Heh. Until next time, mortals.